Maximilian Noichl, is that I hope it's correctly pronounced. Together with Andrea Loettgers, who takes the seat there, will present their investigation of transdisciplinary applications of these models. So far, we have heard a lot about theoretical backgrounds. Now, the presentation promises to understand a little bit more about application in transdisciplinary contexts. May I give you the word?
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Max Noichl. I'm doing my PhD at a theoretical philosophy department at Utrecht University. And today I'm going to present work that I've been doing together with Andrea Loettgers and Tarja Knutila at the philosophy department back in Vienna, which was funded by an ERC grant on Possible Life. Can I just put this in here? Does that still work? That still works. Great. All right. So if you want to follow along this talk like locally, you can just go to my website, maxnoichl.eu/talk, and you will find the slides. And that's actually like maybe a fun thing to do because there will be interactive stuff later on in the talk, and you can also play around with that. Yeah, so what I'm going to do in this talk today, in view of the relatively limited time that we have, is I'm going to introduce you to a tool that we built and that we have called OpenAlex Mapper. And I will start out by quickly explaining to you what the tool does, how it works on a technical, like high-level technical level. And then I'm going to show you the tool, and we can play around with it a little bit. And then after we have done that, I'm going to, all the way back, I'm going to tell you what we actually built this tool for and what it is good for in the context of, HPSS. All right, so OpenAlex Mapper, how does it work? What did we do? Well, I'm really grateful to Arno here because he has done like a lot of explanatory work that I would have needed to brush over now and now can just like sidestep. What we did was first we fine-tuned a language model. That's the Spectre 2 model. Spectre was already mentioned earlier. And we fine-tuned that model to better respect or recognize disciplinary boundaries. So basically had like a data set of articles that come from like very, very similar disciplinary backgrounds, and the model was trained to distinguish those very well from each other. And what you can see here on the left side is basically the training process visualized through UMAP dimensionality reduction. So that's the first step. Now we have our like discipline improved Spectre 2. And this is just like minor changes we were doing to the language model here. Like this is not like a big retraining run. Next thing we did was we went to the OpenAlex database. OpenAlex is like a huge database of scholarly material. It's larger and more inclusive than Web of Science or Scopus. Probably a little bit smaller than Google Scholar, although that's kind of hard to exactly tell. But it has the very big advantage to these other databases that it's basically fully open data. So it's very easy to query in also in batches. It's freely accessible. It's a great thing to use. Like I think more people should use it. All right, and what we did was we basically just sampled 300,000 random articles from OpenAlex. There were very few restrictions on that. We just wanted them to have abstracts which were reasonably well formed and English language. And then we embedded these 300,000 abstracts using first our fine-tuned language model. And then we reduced those embeddings to 2 dimensions using uniform manifold approximation and projection. So basically, you map it down to 2 dimensions. and keep that UMAP model around. Because what OpenAlex Mapper as a tool now does is basically it allows you to put arbitrary queries to the OpenAlex database, download those within the tool, embed them like the same way we did before using the language model, and then push them through the UMAP model that we had trained. So that they basically get like the positions on the two-dimensional map that they would have gotten if they had been present already during the original layout process. And that's just a feature of UMAP that makes it relatively easy to accomplish. All right, and now I'm just hopefully trying to show you this thing. I don't know why this is red. This should not be red. Is it like a zoom thing? That's not great. Is it also red down here?
Yes, it's in all Zoom. We have the rote Gefahr. Now it's gone. Yes.
All right.
And now it's there.
That's not ideal. That actually also didn't happen during testing earlier, so I'm a little bit surprised by this. Let's try again. Maybe I have to... Hello?
Maybe our delicate, sensitive notebooks is there, but with which you work.
Enjoy my emails in the meantime.
Yeah.
We'll fix it. All right, let's reload this. This does look better. Let's see what happens if I do this. Can you see things?
Yes, very
nice.
nice.
I mean, this is good enough for now. let's just continue with this. This is the tool again. If you head to this website or if you are within the talk, you can play around with that. And I'm just going to show you how it works, which is relatively straightforward, right? You just head over to OpenAlex. You search for something that you're interested in, and you can use like the full affordances of the OpenAlex search interface. Let's say we're interested in scale-free network models. Let's search for that. Bam. We just hop over here. We copy-paste the URL to our search query. Head back to OpenAlex Mapper, put it in here. There's all kinds of settings that we can choose from here. I'm going to explain some of them a little bit later. And then we run a query. Let's see whether it works. So what it's doing in the back end right now, it's downloading like the first 1,000 records from the search query we did. We're limiting this a little bit in the interest of, well, time basically. Now it's embedding all of the abstracts of these. And yeah, there's other settings we can do. We can decide whether we want to see like the temporal distributions of things, or whether we just want to see where things pop up, whether we want to look at the citation graph over our map, all that kind of stuff. Right now, it's doing like the processing of the citation graph because I turned that option on. And in a few seconds, hopefully, it should start to produce a map. This is taking longer than I hoped. Somebody else running it? No? Maybe somebody jumped ahead in the queue. That's something that can happen. All right, but we should have even more backup. This is what it will look like when it finishes running. Also for a different query, I'm afraid. So what this gives you is basically, I was searching for coriander here because that's one of the standard search examples by OpenAlex. What it gives you is basically a projection of the search results onto our gray base map here. So you can basically see where do things that use this term, where do things that cite the specific author that I'm interested in, and so on, where do they pop up? And the nice thing about this is that this is basically fully interactive. So you can actually go in here and you can investigate and see, well, why did somebody talk about coriander in epidemiology? Why did somebody talk about coriander in public health? That sort of thing, right? So turning back to our presentation, it's finishing. Here we are. Yes. So this is like an actual example. This is what it would look like for scale-free network models. All right. So this is the tool. You can play with it. Also, we put on a little, like a different version of it down here. This will run in the next few hours. If you're interested, this has a little bit of a like stronger, higher latency GPU setup, so you can run larger stuff there. Anyway, moving on. Well, why is this useful? Like, why did we build this thing? I think what it's supposed to help us with is basically answer problems that we run into, or like help us resolve problems that we run into in the context of HPSS all the time, which are problems of like small samples and case studies, right? We have like very, very nice close-up views of many processes in science that have been studied in a lot of detail, have been studied through well, basically close reading methods of papers, through interaction with scientists, through people who have been well trained as scientists themselves, and so on. And we are kind of worried to some degree how we can like generalize these things, how we can like validate that sort of approach in like the large scale context of global big rapid discovery contemporary science, if you're interested in that sort of thing. And what OpenAlex Mapper is attempting to help you with in that context is basically, well, answer questions of this form like, well, the Hopfield model, where is it really a thing? Like, we know this is a model that was developed in a certain context, that was kind of like transported out of that context into all different other parts of the sciences. But where did it actually really stick? Where did it actually, well, become a thing? Where are people using it? Where are people still referring to it? All that kind of stuff. So the hope is basically to have like all of these pretty involved like quantitative methods in the background to help you do what are in the end qualitative heuristic investigations. And that's why OpenAlex Mapper is set up in a way that allows you to like always go back and forth between like the big map context and then to kind of like move in, zoom in on like specific results and see what is actually going on there. And like if you click on each of these papers, you will be brought to its website, so you can always like draw everything you do with this tool back to the actual textual sources. All right. So I'm just going to close by giving you some examples of things that we have looked at using OpenAlex Mapper. And this is all work that is ongoing. This is all work in progress. So originally, we developed this specifically with the investigation of model templates in mind. Model templates are a way of trying to like conceptualize in philosophy of science the way that often that models of very, very similar structure either arise in different sciences, and the way this might in some sense structure science in a way that is I'll get to that later. Structure the sciences in a way that's somewhat orthogonal to how disciplines work, for example. So here we have like 3 different model templates that occur partially on quite like specific non-continuous spots across our base map. Another thing that we can look at is concepts, right? So here's a map of the concept of phase transition in turquoise, contrasted with the concept of emergence in orange here. And that's, of course, something that people have been doing in this space already. And here, like, I think the main benefit is that it allows you to kind of broaden this out into interdisciplinary contexts, where usually you would have all of these like big problems with getting like specific data sets. All right, and finally, the last example I want to hint at is that we have been looking into is, well, we can look at the distribution of methods, right? Like, where are specific methods used in interdisciplinary contexts. And what I've been looking at here is, well, there is like a debate in philosophy of science right now on the role that machine learning can play in scientific contexts, as opposed to, for example, more classical statistical methods. And what we did here was just we took one machine learning technique, the random forest model, and one somewhat analogous classical method, logistic regression, and we just looked at how are they actually distributed across different disciplines. And we see that there are quite distinguishable patterns about where these things pop up. And then, of course, the philosophical question becomes, well, why is that so? And why does it make sense for, I don't know, people in neuroscience to use random forest and people in very random forests and people in very, well, thematically close psychiatry or mental health research to use logistic regressions. So there are all kinds of interesting questions in there. All right, so moving towards closing out, some qualifications. First, this whole thing kind of stands and falls with the OpenAlex database, which is not perfect. I think data quality is reasonable and also reasonable compared to all the other data sources that we have, but that's something that we always have to keep in the back of our minds. The other thing is right now we are using an English-only language model that does somewhat limit the scope of this thing, but as we're mostly interested in more, let's say, recent history of science, maybe it's not that big of a problem. And also it's, of course, something that could, in principle, be remedied through the use of multilingual models, although I don't know any really good like multilingual science-trained models. Yeah, we are limited to sources that actually have abstracts or good titles, at least for the embedding step. And finally, well, this method is really, like we already had like some remarks on UMAP earlier today, really dependent on the uniform manifold approximation projection algorithm. And so we, which has various imperfections, right? So the first somewhat benign imperfection is that it's a stochastic algorithm. So we are looking at like one single output that is among many possible outputs. The other one is that well, the algorithm has to make trade-offs, right? Like the 768 dimensions of the spectral language model just don't fit well into two, and there has to be some pushing and pulling and misaligning going on in there somewhere. All right, and yeah, that's basically it. The slides are, as I said, online. There is a working paper that we have put together that you can look at and which also explains like the technical parts in a little bit more detail. And I thank you so much for listening, and let's get to the questions.
Thanks a lot. The floor is open for questions. Yes, please. Please go ahead. I keep counting hands, so you can give me signals why there are questions, and I point at you, and then you are up.
Thank you very much. Very fascinating, and the OpenAlex database, you rightly pointed out, it's really valuable. And at the end, you said like, what are the limitations? Of course, this would have been some points that I would have mentioned, and I think that's why it's so important to have some kind of additional verification or some additional data on what kind of disciplines are actually represented in OpenAlex. Like, for example, law just doesn't exist almost. If you wouldn't have to have some kind of measure of how well represented a discipline is to actually have valid results from your queries. And I think this is some area where we really have to work, and I wonder how you could integrate this into your instrument.
Thank you. We're collecting again,
I have currently 3 other in the queue. You are first, then 1 Zoom question. You are, and I put myself also, so it's 4. Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is related to the edges in the network. Are they established based on citations or some other metric?
Sorry, the what?
The graph structure, how does it establish links between the
okay,
nodes?
yeah.
Does it use citations or what is used?
Yeah, thank you.
Adrian?
So this is a question from Philip Meyer in the online audience. He says, are you working with the OpenAlex titles and abstracts only or the full text? And perhaps what difference does it make?
And now we collect you.
Thank you for the presentation. I really enjoyed it. I would like to know what is your definition of discipline and how well your algorithmic way to catch that correspond to this definition?
Arno?
Yeah, just a brief question. Have you evaluated your tool on these type of queries that you're just doing? Like, how often does it actually miss points when I would do it as a human? Check later, is this really correctly placed, mapped on your thing? You find things and it places my point somewhere, but is this something that we would agree to as a human? Thanks.
I've put myself with a small question. You mapped concepts. Typically, people, when they map concepts, they map keywords. Concepts are no keywords, they are abstract things. LLMs seem to be a natural potential to, for the first time, actually map concepts because they come closer to understand the meaning of terms, which is the important aspect with concepts. So one could make historical studies with the development or historical development of concepts for the first time and bridging the situation that keywords expressing concepts change with the language in due course. So how do you map your concept maps?
All right, I think I have to take some questions now.
Yes.
All right, let's see whether I can get everything together. Thanks. First, limitations in OpenAlex, right? That was the question of law. Yeah, that's definitely a thing. I think this is also something that kind of becomes painfully visible in our map. If you go into like more details, like it doesn't distinguish very well between the humanities. I think there is some part of undersampling there. I think the other big databases also are more or less good at that. Like I think, sure. Not just in OpenAlex, right? It's also like not great in Web of Science, I would assume, or Google Scholar. No, that's definitely a problem. I don't know. Like I have been thinking about this, whether there are like clever ways of getting around it in at least the base map construction, that you kind of like oversample from underrepresented disciplines, for example, before you constructed their base map. I haven't done that yet. Also, like it doesn't resolve like the bigger data availability problem. Something I'm working on right now, this is like kind of implemented already, is bring external data, right? Because like the whole thing works via having some textual basis that gets projected, but where the textual basis comes from actually isn't that important. So you have like a lot of abstracts from somewhere else, and these abstracts are of a form that at least like the Spectre 2 model has seen them at some point during training, then we have like a decent chance of mapping those out on this map, and it would still work reasonably well. Also, then of course you kind of like lose potentially out on like the exciting like interdisciplinary part, because if you construct your sample yourself, then it's more likely to be monodisciplinary. All right. Second question, graph structure. Yeah, that's just a citation graph. Like it could be something else, but that's the way we just put it in there like that. And it's kind of like we were interested in doing that because one thing we like to do is basically search for a key paper that introduced a model or a method, and then look at all the papers that cite it, and then you often can kind of see like a nice transition of like everything starts in physics, and then it kind of like branches out throughout different disciplines. And it's kind of interesting to see like which disciplines basically did take no inspiration from physics directly and which did, that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, it could be something else, right? It could be like bibliometric coupling or something. All right, abstracts or full texts. Yeah, so for the embedding, for the projection part, so the actual data points that appear on the base map, we only use abstracts. I think that is, for our purposes, like good enough. Like you can tell the discipline from the abstract, and also like there is research into like science information retrieval models where like you perform really badly if you only use titles. But the jump from full text, from abstracts to full text isn't that big anymore. But what you can do with OpenAlex Mapper, or like that's not our work, that's the work of the great people at OpenAlex, is you have actually a full text search available in the back end, right? So you can actually search for keywords in the full text of the articles, not just in the abstracts. And you can project those articles then, even if that keyword doesn't occur in the abstract. Right, definition of discipline. That's a hairy one. We don't really have a good discipline. What we did a good definition there. Like I kind of concede that discipline or like specific disciplines are always very contested concepts. What we ended up doing to create our training data for our fine-tune was we basically used the discipline labels of OpenAlex, which are all right. So they are an indicator of two things belonging to the same discipline, and we used publication in the same journal as a second indicator of being in the same discipline. And for our training data, we didn't have to make like strong assumptions about things being in a specific discipline, but just of pairs of things belonging to the same discipline, right? And I think we have enough information in there to at least like determine that with some reasonable degree of certainty that we can use it to train our model. But like, I'm completely fine with saying that disciplines are like super amorphous and all over the place here. All right, evaluation. How often does it miss? To be honest, I don't know. Like, I mean, like I am not sure what a formal evaluation of OpenAlex Mapper would look like. Because you don't have like any ground truth data for where things should appear, right? Like, of course, you could do something like cluster the results and then do RAND scores with the discipline labels or something. But what would that give you? Like you run into exactly this problem. So evaluation kind of, I think, happens in working with it and actually drilling down into things, investigating interactively and seeing, does it make any sense? Did it pick up on something that I didn't intend it for it to pick up at all? That sort of thing. And finally, concepts or keywords. Yeah, touché. We looked for keywords, we didn't look for concepts. OpenAlex doesn't have, as far as I know, a semantic search engine. So you're kind of stuck with keyword search to some degree. Something that OpenAlex has, though, and that you can use with OpenAlex Mapper is something that they actually call concepts. So what they did was, and I mean, like you might not be happy with that if you look at it in detail, but they have actually a machine learning approach to mining concepts in the paper full text that they have available, and they give them to you through the API. So you can search for a concept or like a quotation mark concept, and you can project that on OpenAlex Mapper, which may be a bit better or like more close to what you're interested in than just doing keyword search.
So you would have an approach like a concept has a association with a set of keywords. So which
I think it's something like that. What they were doing. Like I'm not like I think like they have like I think a hierarchical view of concepts. and they have basically like one layer in there is topics, that sort of thing. Like I would need to look into it in more detail. I have been like not super convinced by how they were doing that, but it's a thing. Right. Are we out of time? Other questions?
Andrea, maybe the micro. Yeah.
Maybe just to mention about your question about the concepts. So this method we have is integrated in a larger project, so which is our model template project, and also concepts play an important role. This is why we look for phase transitions. So the other question you asked, or the challenge about, knowledge production, about the actual practice, which we have to consider. If you really want to understand how concepts change their meaning, or why our models are picked up by scientists in different disciplines, and how they, change and being taken up, also the concepts which are connected to these models. So we also do a lot of historical work, and also looking really behind the dots and try to understand, on the basis of the paper. So what are the kind of questions the scientists wanted to ask? So I think you cannot use one of these methods by itself, but this large language model it's very important for our work, but it also functions as, generating new questions for us. Every time I look at the map, I get some new questions. So it has to take, these multiple tools, approaches.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I didn't want to say that it's easy to solve or that it's an easy problem, but in conjunction with the previous presentations about conceptual change or change detection. So historians of science usually are interested in these quickly changing phases of something arising new concepts, concept changes. And the funny thing is that during phases in the history of science of new concept inventions, the terms also change very quickly. Just reconsider the expression of COVID for the virus. In the beginning of the pandemic, this term didn't exist. So when you look at literature, then you will find that the course for the pandemic changes every week because of the name that changed there. But it's the same concept which is referred to. So in a way, this kind of problem to identify concept development, viewing that there is a rapid change of linguistic change going hand in hand with it, it's a very difficult task and a very important task for this science. Adrian, you have another question? Otherwise, we will go to the next presentation. Thank you.